Okay, everybody. So it is super early in the morning because I got super early in the morning because I had some work to do. And then I found out this came out. So this is awesome. Before I jump into anything at all and get to the freaking, story already, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you click the join button so you can get request priority. And if enough of y'all are members that all like the same stuff and you all request the same stuff, then it gets uploaded more frequently and faster and with more gusto. Otherwise, it's just up to the whims of whatever the heck I'm doing at the moment. So, that being said, do so. There's links in the description box down below. There's merch. There's alternatives to, supporting the channel on YouTube. And there's Discord and all this other stuff. That's a lot of fun. It's chaos. We're chaos. That being said, are you ready for the man, the myth of the strange, dark, and mysterious? The man, the myth, the hat, the flannel. Well, guess who? It's MrBallen. MrBallen! Entire village dropped dead overnight. Mature audiences only. Please tell me this is not a case of freaking a bunch of idiots mixed a bunch of stuff together and then... Okay, well, I guess we're going to figure out, aren't we? Human's gonna human. Let's go.
One night in August of 1986, villagers in a tiny rural town in West Africa heard a loud booming sound coming from outside. Most of the villagers thought this sound was thunder, others had no idea what it was, but the noise seemed insignificant. Little did they know, that sound was actually a death sentence. They just didn't know it yet. This story sounds like it was pulled straight out of an apocalypse movie, except it really happened. And the scary part is, it could happen again today. But before we get into that story...
Oh, don't tell me it is what I think it is. Please don't tell me it is what I think it is. I hope it's not. And if it is, that's a really terrible way to go. Keep watching for more.
If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a s'more, but instead of chocolate, use mud. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Love MrBallen's intro. Still.
Before sunrise on August 22nd, 1986, a man named Ephraim Che woke up feeling groggy and confused. As he lay in his bed inside of his small mud brick house perched up on a cliff, he tried to remember what happened the night before. He didn't know why, but he knew, something happened last night. I gotta remember it. But as he lay there kind of jogging his memory, he felt like there were holes in his memory, like he couldn't quite piece together what had happened the day or night before. However, there was one thing he distinctly remembered about the night before, and that was at some point he had heard one really loud boom of thunder outside. And Ephraim, kind of somewhere in the back of his mind, had thought, oh, it's gonna rain tonight, and maybe when I wake up it'll still be raining. And then Ephraim, no matter how hard he focused, he couldn't really remember how much time passed after hearing that booming sound and then getting in his bed the night before. But at some point he remembered being in his bed and feeling kind of sick. And that was it. That was his whole memory of the night before. And so that morning, August 22nd, when Ephraim has suddenly woken up feeling confused, he rolled over and he looked out the window right nearby his bed, and he looked outside and he saw the sky was clear and the grass was totally dry. There was no indication that it had rained anytime recently. And so Ephraim is thinking to himself, something is definitely off here, but I just can't get my mind right. And so finally, Ephraim just sits up in his bed, he swings his legs out of his bed onto the ground, he stands up and practically falls over once he's on his feet. But he eventually gets himself back up, kind of steadies himself, and then he thinks, okay, I need to go check on my 4 kids and make sure they're okay. But the second Ephraim began to move in his house, it was like his body didn't obey his mind. Because moments later, instead of checking on his kids, Ephraim had wandered out his front door and was just standing out in front of his house, just kind of staring off into the distance, having no idea why he walked out there. The village where Ephraim lived was called Nios, and Nios is extremely rural. There's no electricity, there's no running water, and there's no paved roads for miles. The village is actually split into two parts. There's Upper Nios and Lower Nios. Ephraim lived in Upper Nios, right near this big, beautiful lake called Lake Nios, but the majority of villagers lived in Lower Nios, which was below the lake. So that morning, after Ephraim kind of found himself standing outside of his hut for no reason, he began looking around in hopes that other people would be out and about in Upper Nios, where he lived, so he could go talk to them and try to figure out what was wrong with him or, what was going on generally. But as he scanned around Upper Nios, he saw there was not another soul anywhere. He was it. He was the only person walking around. So, without giving it much thought, Ephraim decided he would just start walking down towards Lower Nios to try to talk to someone down there. And so he...
Oh, brother. Oh, brother. I got a pretty good guess as to what it's going to be. I got a very good guess about this. And it's a horrible. It sucks. It's you ready to have the feels engaged in full? Well, keep watching.
He left his hut and he began walking down the hill that would take him to Lower Nios. After Ephraim got about halfway down this hill, right when he was near Lake Nios, he stopped because suddenly he became totally aware of the fact that the world was totally silent. Normally, the baboons in the nearby forest would be barking and insects would be humming and birds would be chirping, but now it was just completely, totally silent. Even the mosquitoes that were a totally annoying constant in Ephraim's life were gone. It was like the entire world had just shut down. And as Ephraim is looking around, wondering what is going on here, he hears off to his right, over near the lake, a woman shrieking at the top of her lungs. And so Ephraim whipped his head in the direction the screams were coming from, and he saw there was this woman about 100 feet away. She was a local, and she was looking right at Ephraim, and she was barely dressed, and she was ripping the rest of her clothes off, and she was just screaming. And so, acting on instinct, Ephraim immediately turned and just started running towards this woman. And as he's bounding towards her, getting closer and closer, he's starting to notice there's these strange shapes on the ground kind of near this woman. But as he was staring at them, he just couldn't quite place what they were. But when he got about 20 feet away from this shrieking woman, he stopped again because he realized the shapes on the ground were this woman's entire family. They were all just laying on the ground as if they were sleeping. And near them was all of their cattle, also just laying on the ground as if they were sleeping.
What's y'all's guesses so far? What's y'all's guesses? Waking up, something feels off. The entire area has been silenced entirely. There was a loud thunderclap last night, I'll put it that way. And everything seems to be dead or dying very rapidly. And he's suffering from major disorientation, probably close to fugue, heavy fatigue, and everything is completely out of whack. He definitely feels off balance, so definitely equilibrium issues and trouble processing information as well. So, yeah, and people and animals are just laying down as if, just laying down dead. What's your guesses? Because I have a very good idea, but I'm trying not to give it away unless you haven't seen this already. What is your guesses? What's your best guess? Put it in the comment section down below around this timestamp. Let me know. But yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. Let's keep going. It's pretty bad though. It's really bad.
But as Ephraim stared at each of these people and each of these animals on the ground, he saw there was some blood around their noses and their mouths, and he realized no person who's sleeping would be that still. These people are all dead. These animals are all dead. And so standing there, Ephraim turned his attention from the bodies back to this woman who had dropped to her knees, and she was grabbing her father's arm and yanking on it and screaming for him to please wake up. But Ephraim could tell there was nothing she could do. Everyone was gone. And Ephraim knew somewhere deep down that, he's supposed to go over and help this woman or console her. But suddenly this wave of fear came over him. The combination of having no idea what's going on, his mind really wasn't working still, and now seeing all these dead people, it was like he just couldn't handle it. And so even though he felt terrible about this, Ephraim took one last look at this very distraught woman and her deceased family, and he turned and he ran away. And when he got back to the main trail, he continued downhill in the direction of Lower Nios.
Smart man, right? A lot of people would be bleeding heart syndrome. They'd be like, oh, there's still something you can do. No, there's not. Obviously, whatever's happening is not isolated. Whatever's happening is going to affect her too. You have no idea if it's going to affect you as well. Hell, just approaching too closely and being in the same area runs you the risk of irreversible damage as well. So, I mean, he's doing the smart thing. Most likely, way too late. But yeah, bleeding heart syndrome, it's a killer. It's a real killer. Because, look, there's a lot of times you can't save people. You can't save everyone. And what's the point of die trying when your death will mean nothing? There's a difference between a life sacrificed and a life wasted. Right? A sacrifice can have meaning. You switched your life for someone else's. Yes, it's still tragic, but you accomplished something. A life wasted, well, you wasted yourself trying to save someone that couldn't be saved. But let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Maybe I've just been through it too much and I'm so completely departmentalized that I am emotionally, closed off? Maybe that's what it is. Y'all let me know in the comment section down below. Oh, another ad.
Like all of you, I spend virtually all of my time daydreaming about climbing onto the back of a wild stallion and galloping down a deserted highway into an abandoned city full of zombies that I need to fight off using my wide array of strange DIY weaponry.
Please tell me this is not an advertisement for the latest, what is it, like Left 4 Dead or something? I'm pretty sure it might be the latest Left 4 Dead. It's one of those freaking zombie games. It's gotta be. There's no way the plot line he just exposed is not directly related. Plus, it's also got the beginning part of Walking Dead in it, where he's riding a horse into Atlanta like a dummy, and then he attracts all the zombies under a tank. How does a tank lose to zombies? Seriously? How? Someone explain this to me. It's a tank. Anyway, let's keep going.
Well, dream no more, because today we can kill zombies for real, digitally, with Doomsday: Last Survivors. And before I show you this...
So it's yet another one of those, what is it called? Carbon copy, copy paste games. It's another copy paste game of the hundreds of other games that do zombie stuff. Okay, makes sense.
Gem of a game, I have a surprise for you. Thanks to Doomsday, not only can you now slaughter zombies with me, but also you could win $10,000 in cash prizes. Click the link in the description below and download the game, and you could potentially win some of that money.
Potentially being the keyword here. Dang it, I don't like ads like this. I don't like ads like this. I don't. There's a reason why I made that one video a short while ago, right? And it suckered a bunch of people, right? Because that's all it is. It's a sucker's bet. It's a fool's game. Potentially, right, is not guaranteed. Why are you going to try to chase something that's potential? Why are you chasing something that's potential? Right? You have no direct control over whether or not you're going to get that money. So, yeah. Also, this is new. This is fresh. So this company is only going to give that 10 grand to one person. But they're not going to say that because they want everyone to buy into the idea and the, oh God, I hate this word, with a passion, hope. They're going to get it. But the joke's on them. We're too smart. We're not going to play this stupid game. But we still love MrBallen. We're here for MrBallen, not the game.
Doomsday, which is a zombie survival strategy mobile game. You can choose whatever shelters you want and then go out and recruit the
strategy mobile game. Great.
Strongest squad about this game strategically. Heck, and Doomsday, which lets you dollars in and download linking many other fairy hero wave will.
Don't get suckered into stuff like this, people. Come on. Come on. You're smarter than that. You're able to think. You have a brain.
The villagers in
still love MrBallen. All right, let's go.
Lower Nyos lived in these tiny huts with tin roofs that were closely grouped together, and usually, even early in the morning, Lower Nyos was a very happy and lively place with kids running around and animals walking in the road and music playing. But as Ephraim came down the hill and was within earshot of Lower Nyos, it was deadly silent. And so with panic starting to rise inside of Ephraim, he began to run at full speed, hoping that when he turned the corner and looked down the main road of Lower Nyos, he would see the people he was hoping he would see. But when he turned the corner and looked down Main Street, all he saw were dead animals everywhere. They completely covered the streets, the sidewalk, everything. And so at this point, Ephraim was so desperate to see another person that he kept his eyes looking straight ahead so as not to look at all the dead animals and just ran straight into Lower Nyos. And he turned towards the first hut he saw and he ripped the door open and he stepped inside. And as soon as he did, he just stopped. Because on the ground right in front of him was a woman who was very clearly deceased, just laying in the middle of the floor. She had a bowl of corn right near her hand as if she had been eating and then just fell dead. And so Ephraim, he's staring at this dead woman, and then he looks up and he realizes the bedroom is right in eyesight and he can see her family in their beds. And at first Ephraim thought, oh, they're sleeping. But then as he continued to stare through the doorway into this room, he saw none of them were moving. Their chests were not going up and down from breathing. Her whole family, they were dead too. At this, Ephraim kind of stumbled backwards out of the hut, and then he turned around to face the road he had just been on with all the animals. And when he saw the road again, it was like a piece of his brain started working properly again, because he realized those weren't animal bodies. All those bodies he saw when he came in, those were people. Yes, there were some animals, but most of them were people. He could see people slumped on top of each other, kind of piled up in doorways. He saw one person who was on his motorcycle in the middle of the road, just slumped over his handlebars.
Imagine that, people. Imagine that, okay? Close your eyes for a moment. Think about how your life is, right? If you got family, friends, acquaintances, people you see every day. Right, you got coworkers, and then suddenly one day you wake up, everything feels a little weird. You walk out, and it's as if the world completely stopped. There's dead people inside the house, all over. Your mom, your dad, your little sister, little brother, or your older sister, older brother, or your peered siblings, or your cousins, grandpa, grandma, everyone's dead in the house. All deceased. except you. And now you're shocked, and you're going to be shocked for a while. Shock delays the emotional response because you're overwhelmed at that point in time. And then you walk outside. You're disoriented. You're out of it. You're fugue, right? Fugue state. And you see that there's randomly people just on the sidewalks, some in front of their houses, some in cars that have crashed. Or they're just sitting there. The car running. They didn't even get to put in drive. It's as if everybody just turned into a human, perfect-looking mannequin. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? They're still human. They're still people you knew or know. People you got used to seeing every day. Some that you might have encountered once in a blue moon. Some that you are with all the time. They could be family and they could be strangers. Acquaintances and friends. They're still human. They're not there. Imagine that. Let me know how that feels in the comments down below.
And many of the bodies were either naked or partially clothed with piles of clothing next to them, as if they had been trying to rip their clothes off as fast as they could, like the woman up at the lake had been doing. And as Ephraim looked around in horror, he also realized that there were no markings or cuts or wounds on any of these people. It was like they were just going about their lives when suddenly they died. And so without anything else to do, Ephraim just continued to walk in the direction he had come into the village, hoping that if he kept on going, he might run into someone who was alive. And so he begins walking down the road, he's stepping over bodies, he has no idea what to make of this, and then way down the road, up ahead, he sees there are two people coming towards him. There's a man and what looks like his son, and they're jogging down the road, stumbling over bodies, running towards Ephraim. And so Ephraim stops, expecting these people are going to stop and talk to him. But as these two people got closer, Ephraim saw both of them, the father and the son, their eyes were wide and they were looking straight ahead with kind of a distant 1,000-yard stare, and they didn't stop for a second for Ephraim. It was like they didn't even see him. They just kept on running down the road, past all the bodies. Ephraim didn't try to stop them. He just watched as they passed, and then at some point they veered off the road and ran into the forest and disappeared. And it was at this moment that another part of Ephraim's brain seemed to kind of fit into place, because as he watched this father and son disappear, he suddenly had this memory come flooding back into his mind. And it was a memory of when he was a kid and his grandfather told him a story. And the story was about Nyos villagers a long, long time ago who decided they wanted to cross Lake Nyos from one side to the other. And so their leader magically parted the waters of Lake Nyos, creating a walkway on the lake bed from one side to the other, and the villagers began to walk. And then about halfway across, a mosquito landed on the leader's shoulder, and when he went to slap the mosquito, he lost control of the waters and they came crashing down and drowned all of them. Ephraim's grandfather told Ephraim that the ghosts of these drowned villagers now resided between these two big rocks located near Lower Nyos. And so growing up, Ephraim, along with many other people in this village, believed that because of these ghosts, Lower Nyos must be haunted. And in fact, that was actually why Ephraim built his house in Upper Nyos, to avoid these ghosts. And so now, as this memory of hearing this story from his grandfather has come flooding back to Ephraim, he thinks to himself, of course, all of this is the work of those ghosts. And so,
you know, it's really actually cool that they still have stories just like that in Africa. Bub, they still have really cool stories. And they're old stories. Like, you can ask some people about them, and then when you figure out how old the story actually is, they talk about it as if it was like yesterday. They don't even put like, actual timelines on it or nothing. It's really cool. It's almost as if the story is still fresh all the time. Dude, it's freaking all. Sorry. Like, I enjoy stuff like that. Let's keep going.
So fearing he would be attacked next, Ephraim turned and just continued running down the road, dodging bodies as he went. And as he ran along, periodically he would stop at various tin huts and he would fling the door open in hopes he would find some survivors. But each time he went inside, everybody in there would be dead, lying in their beds or sitting in chairs or lying on the ground. But after running for quite a while, Ephraim turned to go into yet another hut, and right as he reached for the door opened on its own. And standing in front of him was the owner of this hut. His name was Joseph McQuain, and he was in much worse shape than Ephraim. The night before, Joseph had been inside of his hut when suddenly outside he heard that very loud booming sound that sounded like thunder to Ephraim. And then after hearing the sound, Joseph heard his daughter in her bed making this terrible snoring sound. And so instinctively, Joseph turned to walk over to his daughter to make sure she was okay, but he only got a few steps before he collapsed to the ground. He had woken up that morning with cuts all over his arms from where he fell, and he was also totally exhausted and very confused like Ephraim, and so he managed to drag himself over to his daughter's bed, and he pulled himself up onto her bed, and when he got up there, he realized his daughter was deceased. And so now Joseph has opened the door, and he's looking out, and there's all these dead people everywhere, and Ephraim is looking back at him, and Joseph just can't process anything. He's just standing there in a total daze, and Ephraim, he wanted to say something, but no words could come out, and so he too just stood there looking at Joseph. And the two men just stood there right on the threshold of this hut, staring at each other, saying nothing for several minutes, until finally they both just extended their hands and shook silently, and then Ephraim turned around and ran back into the road. And so
you know, I shouldn't be laughing. I really shouldn't be laughing. The bro code is strong with this one. I'm so screwed up. Bub. And I know exactly what's going on, too. I'm going to hell. I guarantee you that. That's some bro stuff right there. Serious bro stuff. Anyway, so to put it into context, right? It's like, okay, so, and women talk about this all the time, at least if they've had like a solid, at least if they're able to, okay, in the modern Western world, I'm talking about these specific women, but if they've had at least a solid boyfriend for maybe like 3 months, okay, which I think is the usual limit, before they go somewhere else, they will notice that a lot of guys, they just, when they're hanging out with the boys, right? When they're with the boys, right? There's just some stuff that they can just understand. It's some serious bro, whatever they call it, bro energy, bro vibes, whatever. You're just able to look at the other guy and be like, uh-huh. And the women are left confused. They're like, what just happened? You didn't say anything. Use your words. I don't know what's going on. And it's like, oh, it's no big deal. We just understand each other. Well, this is that, except under the circumstances of both these men have been through something absolutely horrific. And all it takes is for them to look at each other to understand exactly what's going on. And thus, they had a bro shake. I'm going to hell. Oh man, if hell exists, it's reserved for me. But I love it. I love it. It seems like the only good thing happening in this story so far was a bro handshake. They sat there staring like, bro, bro. That's all it took. That's all it took. Yeah, this is incredibly tragic. It's incredibly tragic, but that just, Bub, it just goes, men, okay, men can get men just at a certain level that women cannot ever fathom or understand. And then women try to act like they're mysterious when they're really not. Anyway, let's keep going.
Joseph at first followed Ephraim kind of out of instinct, but very quickly he veered off from Ephraim, and Joseph went into his neighbor's hut to see if they were okay. But when he opened the door and went inside, he saw all of his neighbors were deceased. But Joseph, he barely reacted to this. It was like he was so numb to what was going on, he just couldn't process it. But after seeing all of his neighbors dead, somewhere deep down inside of his consciousness, Joseph knew he had to go find help. That was his mission. And so he left his neighbor's hut, he ran back to his own hut, he climbed onto his motorcycle, and he started to drive. It took Joseph a long time to drive to the next closest village, but when he got there, there were people and they were all alive. And so Joseph tried to tell them what had happened in his village, but Joseph just had such a hard time putting his thoughts together that his sentences just didn't make sense. He was kind of incoherent. And then when he did make sense, the things he was talking about, an entire village just suddenly dying, sounded crazy. And so nobody at this other village took Joseph seriously, and so that day, nobody from this other village went to Nios to see what was going on. But the next day, people from this other village did go to Nios, and when they got there, it was exactly as Joseph had said. The whole village was dead. And as authorities would soon find out, it was not just Nios that was affected by this tragic event. Several villages not far from Nios had also suffered mass casualty events on the morning of August 22nd, 1986. And soon, news of these strange mass death events in West Africa were making the news all over the world. And so on August 25th, 3 days after this terrible event, an American scientist named Joseph Devine turned on his TV and saw the news coming out of West Africa. The newscasters were totally baffled about how this could have happened, and no one can figure out what killed these people. And Devine is just staring at his TV in shock, and then he turns, runs to his phone, and he calls his contact at the US government and told them, "You gotta send me to Nios." And because his contact knew Devine's background, he immediately said, "Yes, I'll get you on a flight as soon as we can." Devine and his scientific partner, Haraldur Sigurdsson, arrived in Nios 2 days later on August 27th. When they got there, they saw the military was burying the dead in these huge mass graves, and looking on were the few survivors of this event, like Joseph and Ephraim. Along with Ephraim's family, they also survived, as well as other villagers who had come to see what happened. And so as Devine and Sigurdsson kind of maneuver their way through this crowd of very solemn people, they heard them talking about what they thought happened to all these people. And the theories ranged from secret governmental experiments to invisible superweapons to even atomic explosions. Others, like Ephraim, believed this was paranormal, that those ghosts from the drowned villagers had attacked the village. But Devine and Sigurdsson were reasonably sure that none of those theories were correct. They felt like they did know what actually happened because they had actually witnessed a tragedy like this before, but on a much smaller scale. 2 years earlier, and 60 miles south of Nios, in an area called Lake Manoon, 37 people suddenly dropped dead. And Devine and Sigurdsson had been sent out there to try to figure out what happened to these people. And after lots of experimentation, they came up with a theory that explained what happened. And they called it unknown unnatural hazard. They tried to warn people in the area that this could happen again. And in fact, Sigurdsson had written an entire scientific paper about this theory and submitted it to a prestigious science journal. But nobody took Devine or Sigurdsson seriously. What they were proposing sounded made up. It sounded preposterous. But now, in Nios, it looked very much like their unknown, unnatural hazard had happened again. Devine and Sigurdsson would leave the group of people watching this mass burying take place, and they would make their way up the hill to Lake Nios, where they would immediately get to work taking water samples from deep inside the lake. And after capping these samples, the lids began popping off. And that was the moment that Devine and Sigurdsson knew their unknown, unnatural hazard theory had to be correct. Lake Nios is not your typical lake. It is a crater lake, which means it sits inside of a volcanic crater, which is a big, deep, bowl-like pit that was formed from a past volcanic explosion. And because of this volcanic activity, there is carbon dioxide in Lake Nios. A lot of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, or CO2 for short, is an odorless, invisible gas that we actually breathe out when we exhale. Now, if you inhale a little bit of CO2, that won't hurt you. If you inhale a little bit more, like a medium amount of CO2, you could feel dizzy and nauseous. Your skin will start to feel like it's on fire. You'll have rapid breathing. It'll be horrible, but you'll most likely survive if you stop breathing CO2. And if you breathe in a ton of CO2, you're dead. The CO2 in Lake Nios had been trapped at the bottom of the lake for as long as anyone knew. But on the night of August 21st, 1986, something happened that caused that trapped gas to be released. Now remember, on that night, August 21st, Ephraim recalled hearing what he thought was thunder outside, and also Joseph would recall hearing a loud booming sound that night. Now, we don't know exactly what that sound was, but it's safe to say that that noise, whatever it was connected to releasing the gas. Maybe it was the sound of a rock slide and big rocks plummeted into the lake and hit the lake bottom and freed the gas that way. Or maybe it was just an actual volcanic eruption inside of the lake. Whatever it was, when the CO2 was freed, it bubbled to the top like it bubbled and popped off the lids of their sample tubes, and when it reached the top of the water, it kind of formed a cloud above the lake. Now, we can't see the cloud, but you can imagine a big cloud, and then this toxic CO2 cloud kind of rolled its way down the hill towards Lower Nios and other villages in the area. And when this big toxic cloud began coming in contact with people, with animals, and insects, virtually all of them died. As for the few who survived, like Ephraim and his family and Joseph, they were left feeling horribly confused, disoriented, nauseous, totally dizzy from CO2 poisoning. But when they finally were able to get away from Nios and breathe fresh air, the effects of CO2 poisoning wore off and they were okay. This deadly CO2 phenomenon was exactly what happened on a much smaller scale 2 years earlier at Lake Manoon.
So what were y'all guesses so far? What were your guesses so far? Because as soon as I heard all this combined happening, I immediately was like, yep, I've heard of this before. I have heard of this before. I heard of this because it was in a briefing that I received upon traveling to other countries. So when you're traveling to other countries, there's areas they put off limits. They tell you why they're off limits, blah, blah, blah. They tell you all the hazards and all the dangers and all things that have happened. They even include incident reports and all that kind of stuff. For us, we got that same briefing. So, yeah. There were certain places we were staying away from, most certainly, and not taking the risk of going to at all. So yeah. That's why I may or may not be very familiar with this. Because when I heard all about it, I was like, wait, this sounds incredibly familiar. Turns out I was right. But what were your guesses, though? I want to see what your guesses were in the comments down below. What were y'all guessing? Giant thunderclap? What'd you think? It was like some kind of like gas bomb or something? What'd y'all think? I'm excited to see what the comment section says.
It was the unknown, unnatural hazard that Devine and Sigurdsson had tried to warn people about. The official death toll of the Lake Nyos disaster was more than 1,700 people and more than 3,500 livestock, although exact numbers will likely never be known. Today, people have moved back into Upper and Lower Nyos, including Ephraim, despite the fact that authorities have said that lake is still very dangerous and another unknown unnatural hazard, aka a CO2 disaster, could absolutely happen again.
And you would think that they would know to get some kind of apparatus for the homes, right? Some kind of filters. But then again, they're very rural people in Africa, and they live very incredibly rurally, like electricity, running water, all that kind of stuff is very rare. So I presume the locals are just going to rough it, essentially, and live how humanity has lived for millennia. You know, it's kind of strange that on one hand it is kind of appealing. It's kind of appealing to just go out to some place that has water and greenery and just make a hut, put like a cloth door in front, just live like we naturally used to. There's a certain appeal to that. Anyways, continue. All right, there we go, folks. There we go. MrBallen. Entire village dropped dead overnight. An entire village. Right? And Cameroon is tough enough as it is. Nios is bub. Just imagine that. Imagine that. Anyway, there we go. What did y'all think? What did y'all think? Y'all let me know in the comments down below. All right, you know what time it is. You like me, you like MrBallen, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Then hit the real subscribe button, comment the notification bell so that you get notified when I do anything at all. Description box. There's stuff down there. There's links to merch, to alternative forms of supporting the channel and buying my son lunches. There's also a link to Discord, so you can send me requests directly, and you can talk to me on live streams. Become a member of the channel, and you get immediate access to voice chat. And you get request priority, which means that if enough of you are members and you all like the same thing and you all ask for the same thing, it gets done immediately. That being said, be good. Be safe. Make good life for yourselves. All right? Avoid places like Nyos, Cameroon. And I will see y'all in the next one. Badger out.